And a cloudy day for the winter solstice today, the shortest day of the year. We've got some drizzly outbreaks of rain across parts of northern England, Northern Ireland through this evening, and tonight some of that rain will push into Wales and the southwest of England too. Mostly dry tonight across the southeast, mild for most places, but for Scotland we could well see quite a sharp frost around. There'll be some mist and some fog through the day tomorrow, drizzly rain in the south and the west which should ease away. It'll continue to be pretty murky across western areas with hill fog persisting through the day. A bit more brightness tomorrow further east across the country, perhaps a few brighter spells for southeast of England up towards eastern Scotland, and temperatures between around 9 to 12 degrees. Saturday, some heavy rain across the far northwest of Scotland. That's going to be more of a player through the weekend and on into Christmas too. Potentially disruptive rain here to the northwest of Scotland, dry and mild elsewhere. But through into Christmas then, things are staying mild, pretty cloudy, pretty breezy. There could be some potentially heavy rain towards the north. Bye for now.
Coming up next on the BBC News Channel, it's the news at 5. Later this evening, Outside Source covers all the latest global stories at 9. Followed by another chance to see tonight's Newsnight at 11:15.
Today at 5, after the sacking of Damian Green, some Conservative MPs demand action against former police officers for the way they handled the case. The former First Secretary of State was accused of making misleading statements about pornography found on his office computer 9 years ago. Now the police handling will be investigated.
I share the concerns that have been raised across the political spectrum about comments that were made by a former police officer, and I expect that issue to be properly investigated.
We'll have the latest on the repercussions from Mr Green's departure. He was one of Theresa May's closest colleagues in government. The other main stories on BBC News at 5. Lawyers for the British-Iranian woman Nazanin Ratliff, who's in jail in Iran, say she's eligible for early release. We'll be speaking to her husband. Police in Australia have arrested a man who, they say, deliberately drove into pedestrians in Melbourne, injuring at least 19 people. Toys R Us has avoided collapse after creditors backed a rescue plan for the troubled retailer.
Birmingham!
And yes, Birmingham is confirmed as host city of the 2022 Commonwealth Games. It'll be the most expensive sports event in Britain since London 2012. It's 5 o'clock. Our main story is that the forced resignation of Damian Green, one of Theresa May's closest allies in government, has prompted a furious response among a number of Conservative MPs. They have renewed their condemnation of former police officers who revealed that pornography had been found on Mr Green's parliamentary computer 9 years ago, before he became a minister. Scotland Yard says it has asked the Information Commissioner to investigate the retired officers and whether data protection laws have been broken. And that decision has been welcomed by Theresa May, who is on a visit today to Poland, as our political correspondent Ben Wright tells us.
Sacked from the cabinet and out the door. The third senior minister to leave Theresa May's team in less than 2 months.
Why did you lie to the public, Mr Green?
This morning, Damian Green wasn't keen to talk, but former cabinet colleagues did, accepting Mrs May had no choice but to fire, with a heavy heart, her de facto deputy and longtime friend.
He lied on a particular incident, yes. I think lots of people who understand the context would appreciate why that might have happened, but that doesn't make it any more acceptable. And I think what this shows is that in our democracy, we hold cabinet ministers to the very highest standards of conduct.
It all stems back to this police raid on Mr Green's parliamentary office 9 years ago. Officers said legal pornography was found on computers. Damian Green has always denied it was his, but as recently as last month insisted he had not been told about it. That wasn't true. He's now admitted the police talked to his lawyers about it in 2008 and the police raised it with him in 2013. In his resignation letter, Mr. Green said, "I apologise, my statements were misleading on this point, and it's that breach of the ministerial code that cost him his job."
Damian Green was judged to have broken the ministerial code, and he had to pay the price for that, which was the Prime Minister quite rightly not letting a lifelong friendship with him interfere with calling for the right thing, which was for him to resign.
The allegations about pornography were publicly aired by a former Assistant Commissioner of the Met Police, Bob Quick, and a number of Tory MPs are angry at the way former police officers have behaved.
I think they should be investigated for misconduct in public office. That's a criminal offence. I think what they've done is completely wrong. It undermines trust in the police. How can any of us, trust giving information to the police if senior officers leak in this way?
The Cabinet Office investigation also examined claims from this Tory activist about inappropriate behaviour by Damian Green. Her account was said to be plausible, but there was no clear conclusion about what happened. Mr. Green apologised for making her feel uncomfortable, but denied any wrongdoing.
His resignation and a consequence for an action sends a very, very clear message to young men and women who work in and around politics to feel that if they do come forward, there is a chance there will be consequences.
Damian Green's departure is certainly a personal loss for the Prime Minister. He was a quietly powerful member of the government, an advisor and friend to Theresa May. But all Tory MPs seem to accept that he had to go, and the political damage feels limited. This morning, Theresa May arrived in Poland, having survived a turbulent, difficult political year. But her readiness to dismiss one of her closest allies shows some steel and a determination to carry on. Ben Wright, BBC News, Westminster.
So let's stay with the fact that, as we are seeing there, the Prime Minister making that official visit to Poland today. And at the news conference, Mrs May was indeed asked about this issue, the forced resignation of her close colleague Damian Green, and the issues attached to that. So let's listen to what she had to say.
And more recently, of course, as issues have arisen within the UK Parliament, I brought together leaders of all the parties to ensure that within Parliament people would feel that it was a workplace where they had no cause for concern and would be able to raise any concerns that they did have, be they of sexual harassment or of other concerns, for example, of bullying. And work is being done by the Leader of the House of Commons and the Leader of the House of Lords, together with all the parties and with staff representatives, to ensure that we have a proper grievance procedure in the House of Commons. Your second question was about whether the police had questions to answer. Now, there are two issues that may be addressing. I suspect you may be referring to the question of the attitude of the police in the case of Damian Green. And as I said in my letter to Damian yesterday, I share the concerns that have been raised across the political spectrum about comments that were made by a former police officer, and I expect that issue to be properly investigated, to be taken seriously and to be properly looked at.
Well, that was the Prime Minister speaking in Poland earlier today. With me is our Home Affairs correspondent, Danny Shaw. So we had the forced resignation last night. We had the exchange of letters, and there were some very telling sentences in those letters. Are we saying today, Danny, that the questions that people were asking about Mr Green's conduct and response, are those questions now resolved?
I don't think so in terms of the pornography, because Damian Green has now acknowledged that his solicitors were told pornography was found on his work computer in 2008, and he was personally told himself in 2013. So that raises the question, what did he do? Because he has said that he didn't download the pornography or view the pornography. Well, in that case, someone else has put that pornography on his computer. So did he raise that potential security breach with the parliamentary authorities in 2008 or in 2013? Did he tell David Cameron when he was appointed to the government? And particularly when he became the policing minister, did he raise it with Theresa May, who was then the Home Secretary? So I think those are important questions for Damian Green to answer.
We heard the Prime Minister there referring to the fact that the Information Commissioner is now going to look at the conduct of 2 retired officers in response to this. And of course, we've had quite a few angry responses from Conservative MPs today. So if we think about that investigation, what are the issues raised there?
Well, the issues are about breaching confidentiality. You know, when police officers conduct an investigation, they're meant to keep confidential any matter that isn't related to the criminal inquiry completely to themselves. They're not meant to disclose it in any shape or form. The issue is what happens when you leave the police service. You can't be disciplined for misconduct because you've left the police. So is there a law that's been broken? Well, the Metropolitan Police seem to think that the most likely offence comes under the Data Protection Act, but there is an inbuilt defence under that Act of acting in the public interest. And I think these 2 police officers, former police officers, would say that what they have done is in the public interest. So it'll be interesting to see if the Information Commissioner pursues it, investigates it, and if it results in criminal charges. OK, Danny, once again, thanks very much. Danny Shaw there, our Home Affairs correspondent, with the latest on the developments in this story today. And let's just stay with it, because it's also been announced this evening that the International Trade Minister, Mark Garnier, will continue in post after a Cabinet Office investigation into allegations of inappropriate behaviour. Those investigations found that he did not break the ministerial code. The Prime Minister said that a line should be drawn under the issue after the inquiry found that he had not breached the expected standards of behaviour since he became a minister. Let's talk a little more about this with our political correspondent, Leila Nathu, who's at Westminster. Tell us more about this, Leila.
Well, Huw, this is an investigation that's been going on almost 2 months into Mark Garnier, the International Trade Minister. It followed claims made by his then secretary of 2 separate incidents going back to 2010. One that he made inappropriate comments towards her, and again that he had asked her to go out and buy sex toys. Now, he had admitted these 2 incidents, but said they had been taken completely out of context, and he said that they had been friends at the time. He'd apologised at the time, but there was a Cabinet Office investigation begun into his behaviour, as you say, to determine whether he had broken the ministerial code. And tonight we have just received the results of that investigation, which found that since 2016, since he became a minister, he had not broken the ministerial code. And regarding the behaviour going back to 2010, before he was in government, the fact that he had apologised and that he had no intention to cause distress was enough for the Prime Minister to decide to draw a line underneath this issue. So you heard Theresa May there earlier talking about the fact that she had convened party leaders to try to come to create some sort of proper grievance procedure for people working in Parliament. She will hope that that reassures staff here in Westminster, and the fact that if claims are made against members of the government, that they will be investigated properly.
Leila, thank you very much. And if there's any more, we'll be back to you right away. Leila Nathu for us there in Westminster. Time is 11 minutes past 5. Now, in Australia, 2 men have been arrested after a car was deliberately driven into a crowd of pedestrians in a busy street in Melbourne. 14 people were injured, several of them critically. Police say the driver was a 32-year-old Australian citizen of Afghan origin with a history of mental health issues and drug use. A second man who was arrested nearby was said to be filming the incident and was carrying a bag containing knives. But police say at this stage, in their view, there is no evidence of a terror link. Our correspondent, Huw Griffith, has the latest for us.
Pinned to the ground, a man arrested by the police just a few metres from the 4x4 vehicle used to mow down pedestrians. Around them, paramedics rushed to help the injured pedestrians left lying in the street. Minutes earlier, the city centre was packed with commuters and Christmas shoppers. The car drove towards them at speed, leaving some in a critical condition. The police say the driver was a 32-year-old Australian of Afghan descent with a history of mental health problems.
At this time, we don't have any evidence or intelligence to indicate a connection with terrorism. Having said that, however, we continue to support this investigation with our Counter-Terrorism Command to ensure that there isn't that connection and that there is no ongoing threat.
Eyewitnesses were left in shock. One business owner watched events unfold in front of him.
He just ploughed into them without stopping, and all you could hear was just people hitting the front bumper and the windscreen and people screaming. And the only reason I think he slowed down was because just the sheer volume of people he'd hit.
Special security measures to prevent vehicle attacks have been introduced in Melbourne after a similar incident in January, but nothing was able to stop the 4x4, bringing chaos to the city once again.
We have seen an horrific act, an evil act, an act of cowardice perpetrated against innocent bystanders. We are all caught up in this. We are all deeply sad and deeply wounded.
Police are still questioning the driver and a second man arrested at the scene. They've stressed they believe this was a one-off incident, but Melbourne remains a city on high alert. Howell Griffith, BBC News.
Now, the troubled retailer Toys R Us has avoided administration after the Pension Protection Fund said it will back a restructuring plan. A meeting of creditors approved the plan with more than 98% in favour, and the deal now could save more than 3,000 jobs in the UK. Let's talk to our business correspondent Simon Gompertz, who's at a Toys R Us store in South London. We've spoken quite a few times in recent days, Simon. What is your assessment now of the state of the company given what's happened today?
Well, it seems, as you say, as though Toys R Us has averted the danger of having to call in administrators and then potentially close down all its 105 outlets. But what's happened today has also vindicated the policy of the Pension Protection Fund, and that looks after the pension schemes of stricken companies like this, of playing hardball, of insisting of getting a extra contribution to try and shore up the pension scheme. So two things have happened today. The first is that in intense negotiations, Toys R Us has reached a deal with the Pension Protection Fund. They'll pay more than £9 million over the next 3 years to help the pension scheme. And that meant that then they could go forward and put their rescue deal, their plan for the future, to creditors who passed it in with a vote of 98% in favour. Now, it's not all unalloyed good news for the thousands of people who work for Toys R Us, because the rescue plan involves closing down 26 of the stores. This is one of them on the Old Kent Road in South London, and that's going to happen in spring next year, and probably 500 to 800 jobs may go at that point. From the customer's point of view, well, it's business as usual. It's been busy today in advance of Christmas, lots of discounts here. And Toys R Us is saying all the normal policies like gift cards and being able to return items, they remain valid for the moment. They're saying to customers, it's now safe to shop at Toys R Us.
Simon, thanks very much for the update. Simon Gompertz, our business correspondent at that Toys R Us store in South London. Time is 16 minutes past 5. Let's have a quick look at the headlines for you on BBC News. Theresa May says there must be a proper investigation into the former police officers who revealed that pornography was found on Damian Green's parliamentary computers back in 2008. Lawyers for the British-Iranian woman Nazanin Ratliff, who's in jail in Iran, say she is eligible for early release. Police in Australia are investigating why a man deliberately drove a car into a crowd of pedestrians in Melbourne, injuring 19 people, 4 of them seriously.
In sport, Manchester United and Manchester City won't be punished over the tunnel incident after last week's derby. United boss Jose Mourinho had water and milk thrown at him. City coach Mikel Arteta suffered a cut head during a post-match altercation. The Manchester United legend Ryan Giggs says he's not in the running to take over at bottom-of-the-table Swansea. Paul Clement was sacked yesterday. And the city of Birmingham has been praised for its dynamism and diversity after being awarded the 2022 Commonwealth Games. They were the only bidder. I'll be back with more on all those stories in the next 15 minutes.
Just some breaking news in for you from the UN General Assembly in New York. A very important vote which took place there, basically centred on the very controversial decision taken by President Trump to announce that for the United States, Jerusalem would become the capital of Israel. Well, basically the vote in the General Assembly has gone against the United States in effect. There were 9 countries voting against the UN General Assembly resolution, 35 abstaining. But I'm just looking at the key votes here. 128 countries voting in favour of the UN call for the US to withdraw decision to recognise Jerusalem as the Israeli capital. Now, this is despite, I have to say, quite a few threats, really, from the Trump administration to cut aid, maybe, to some countries if they voted in a certain way. Turkey, one of the countries I noticed earlier, complaining about bullying behaviour by the Trump administration. So, an interesting vote. It's not binding, as I understand it, but it's certainly a very big rap on the knuckles for the Trump administration. 128 countries voting in favour of this call for the US to withdraw that very controversial decision to name Jerusalem as the Israeli capital. 128 of them, some abstentions, some 35, 9 voting against. So if there's any more reaction on that, I'll bring it to you straight away, but it clearly is a significant vote there in the UN in the past few minutes. 18 minutes past 5, the husband of Nazanin Ratliff, the British-Iranian woman who's in jail in Iran, accused of spying, says she's been listed by the authorities there as eligible for early release. Richard Ratliff described this as a positive sign. Mrs. Ratliff's family and the British government insist that she was on holiday when she was arrested last year, and the Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson flew to Tehran just a fortnight ago to push for her release on humanitarian grounds. So quite a potentially significant development today, and I'm very pleased to say that Richard Ratliff has joined me in the studio. Richard, thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Good to have you with us. Let's just spell out, in your view, how significant this could be.
Yeah, so hard to know exactly how significant, but definitely a positive step. So if you go back a few weeks, Nazanin was facing 2 court cases, so she had an open court. The Foreign Secretary went to Iran and that second court case was closed down, so she then had a closed court case. Now, her court system has been moved from being closed case to being eligible for early release, which means formally on the system she's eligible to be released at any point. So what her lawyer said to her very excitedly yesterday, and he went into prison to tell her, was that, you know, okay, there's some paperwork to finalise, it might take a couple of weeks, but it might only take a couple of weeks. So, I mean, you know, don't count your chickens until...
No.
But gosh,
very
we're hoping for a much happier Christmas.
That's an amazing development, really, isn't it, after what you've been through? What's happened in the interim? Is it all to do with Boris Johnson's visit, or what? You know, what's happened to bring us to this point?
So since the Foreign Secretary visited, we've had all sorts of things happening. So we've had some positive steps. So the Foreign Ministry undertook to follow up on her case with the judiciary, and they've done that. The Foreign Minister met with the Chief Prosecutor, who's the sort of head of the judiciary, I think on Saturday. Then the Chief Prosecutor's deputy came to the prison to meet Nazanin on Wednesday as well. So there's been those sort of following up. The micro level of her treatment, so she's been getting extra phone calls, she's been getting to me, she's been getting extra visits, and there's sort of a way in which her treatment's been lightening, and then off stage somehow, now on the system it's changed. So at the same time, there's been a bit of a backlash. We've had various hardline media talking about this, and who are the Brits, who is the Foreign Secretary. We've also had on Friday prayers, the last Friday prayers, the prayer leader of Mashhad, which is the most holy city in Iran, a very, very sort of strident kind of criticism of the Foreign Secretary and of Nazanin, and called her a dirty spy and said that she'd sold out her country. So, I mean, I protested about that to the Iranian embassy. There's clearly, you know, it's unstable, and if we'd had this conversation yesterday, I was pretty low. But, I mean, today we've had good news, and I mean, it's hopefully Friday prayers tomorrow doesn't bring any more bad news, and hopefully Christmas might bring, I mean, the very good news.
I suppose the battle is to just try to contain your excitement, because, you know, it's been a volatile situation to be in, to say the least. And for her, I mean, what is she feeling today?
So I think volatile is exactly right, and I think it's very up and down for her, and obviously, I mean, I try to be level-headed, and sometimes I am, sometimes not so much, and equally, her probably more so, because she's sort of waiting to see what happens. So she was pretty low earlier in the week. The lawyer said she was very happy yesterday, unsurprisingly. So, I mean, I'll next get to speak to her on Saturday, and there's no phone calls today and tomorrow. So
any guidance from the lawyer about, you know, when the next step might be, maybe not release, but when the next step might be, which will give you a clearer indication of which way this is going?
So short answer, I mean, I'm sure it's going in the right direction. It's just, you know, when rather than if, I think now. But yeah, what he said was there's some paperwork to finish off. Who knows how many papers, who know how much work.
But having paperwork is rather different to, you know, where you were
than having
before.
a court case, for sure.
Exactly.
For sure.
Just some thoughts on, because, you know, there's been some controversy about the way government has handled this, and you've made your views clear about that in the past. today, if all goes well and this is the development that everyone's been waiting for, what would be your perspective on how things have transpired over the last month or so?
Yeah, I mean, I think for it's wait till she's home and then look at what all the lessons are, and certainly, I mean, my complaints were that her case is too low a profile.
Yeah.
Now it's a high profile one. Foreign Office was quite wary about that. I said, I think it'll help. I think it's helping, but neither of us are right just yet. She's still behind bars, so we'll see afterwards. And there probably is a need to sort of look at, gosh, we've had bad times and good times, and hopefully we're close to the end.
I suppose some viewers might be thinking, okay, has the lawyer explained, just not to get into too many technicalities, but what is the legal process by which her category has changed? How would that be justified?
So he put in an application about 6 weeks ago saying, listen, she'll come out to a third of a sentence, she should be eligible for early release. And the problem back then was there was this second court case. So we had one problem that might be solved, but this other, well, that second court case has gone away. That application has obviously been processed and has moved forward. So, he's sitting there saying, well, I've done my job and it's helped and it looks like it's working out. And I mean, fair play to him, he could be right.
So 2018, fingers crossed, and we're seeing a lovely image there. I just think 2018 might be the year.
A whole new start.
Early 2018, yes? Very early 2018.
Yes, and I'll even take late 2017.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's great to talk to you, Richard, and we'll keep our fingers crossed.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. Thanks very much indeed. Richard Ratliff there, and let's hope that that's working out as everyone hopes. It's 24 minutes past 5. The city of Birmingham has been confirmed as the host city of the 2022 Commonwealth Games. Glasgow was the last British city to host the Games. That was back in 2014. That was a great event. Birmingham beat Liverpool in the bidding process this time, and the Games are expected to cost £750 million, the most expensive sporting event in Britain since London 2012. Our correspondent Phil Mackey reports now from the city of Birmingham.
It hardly came as a surprise, but in the end, Birmingham was the only bidder. But there was genuine joy when the announcement was made.
It's my great pleasure to announce that the host of the 2022 Commonwealth Games will be Birmingham.
The bid focused on the second city's population, which is the youngest in Europe. It also looked at its diversity. There are people here who can trace their heritage to all of the Commonwealth nations. Most of the venues already exist and simply need an upgrade.
The benefits to the city are huge. Not only is this the opportunity to reposition the city of Birmingham nationally and internationally, but the economic benefit, it'll generate over £500 million gross for the city of Birmingham and over £1 billion for the UK as a whole. So this is a fantastic opportunity, a wonderful Christmas present for the city of Birmingham.
It's all about the legacy, not just the stadia and the infrastructure. These teenagers could be participants in 2022.
It's great. I thought it would be a great opportunity for me to aim for, to get to the 2022 Commonwealth Games. I'd love to be a part of it with my team England, and I just think it's a great opportunity for me as a person to be able to aim for something in my hometown.
There are already fantastic facilities here in Birmingham, like the High Performance Centre here at the Alexander Stadium. But there are also concerns that the amount of money it will cost to stage the Games at a time of austerity could leave the wrong kind of legacy.
Well, opinions very mixed about it. Some people are very excited about the event coming. It's good news for Birmingham. Others are very concerned about the effect both on council services, which are not at a great standard at the moment, and they're also concerned about the disruption in the local community and whether we'll end up worse off or better off as a result of it.
Despite concerns over costs, Birmingham desperately fought to win the bid. And today is about celebrations.
These are the athletes of the future. And I mean, today when I announced that up there, these 11 and 12-year-olds, any one of them could either be a competitor, they'll be spectators, I doubt if any of them will be officiating, but they could be volunteers, because 16 is the volunteer age in the Commonwealth Games. So the world's their oyster here. Yes, fantastic.
The second city often feels overlooked and disparaged. Showing itself off in 2022 is now its goal. Phil Mackey, BBC News, Birmingham.
So a sense there of the expectation and excitement. I'm delighted to say that Tony Jarrett is with me. Needs no introduction. Former hurdler, of course, won the gold medal at the '98 Commonwealth Games in Kuala Lumpur. And we're also joined in Birmingham by the Olympic gold medalist Mark Lewis-Francis, sprinter, who won silver and gold at the Commonwealth Games in Delhi in 2010. Mark, thanks very much for coming in. Good to have you with us. Tony, I'll start with you. This news today, what do you make of it?
It's amazing. It's great news, and I think Birmingham will put on a great show. We've done it in London, we did it in Glasgow, and we're going to do it in Manchester. I know Manchester is a good city, and I know they'll put on a great show. I'm just thinking,
What does it mean for a city like Birmingham to be hosting this? I mean, what kind of impact will it have?
It would have a great impact because there are great talents in Birmingham, and this Commonwealth game would bring infrastructure in there, and will help young talented athletes to go out and perform, and it would just bring jobs. And it will help out that city, and like I said, it's going to be a great show. Let's go
to the city. Mark, what do you make of it?
Over the moon. I'm just a bit gutted that I retired a bit too early. But I think it's great news for Birmingham, and I think the youngsters that are going to be working towards 2022 should start getting excited. I competed in Manchester in 2002, and it was amazing.
Yeah, that's a very good point, isn't it? I'm just thinking, what kind of work do you think needs to be going in right now, given that you've got a bit of a run-up, to get more young people involved in sport? That was all the talk around London 2012. What kind of legacy there would be, for, people taking part in sport at all kinds of levels? What could Birmingham offer, do you think?
I think Birmingham, we've got amazing stadiums, amazing facilities in Birmingham. We're just not using them enough, and I think now we're knowing that we're going to have the Commonwealth Games in 2022, we're going to be out there in the schools, finding the next best talent, working with kids that are financially struggling to get to training, just so they can fulfil their dream. And I think the legacy is going to be lived on for years and years and years.
Tony, your thoughts on that? Because, one of the most important things about these events, given the level of investment going in there, is that it really does have an impact on lots of young people who may not otherwise actually get engaged in sport in such a big way. And, Birmingham could offer a massive opportunity for that.
Absolutely. And then, like Mark said, you get these young kids involved. And, I think we're in London 2012, a lot of young kids got involved. I coached myself, and I've seen a lot of young kids getting involved in sports. So this would be great for Birmingham, and it would help the community, help the schools in itself to get these young talents out. And Mark Lewis-Francis is one of the greatest talents that came out of Birmingham. So, definitely he's got a good role model.
If someone said to you, Mark, £750 million to host this event, some people out there may well say, and say it reasonably, that's a lot of money which could be spent elsewhere. What would you say to them?
We're going to have one of the biggest sporting events that Birmingham's ever seen. Like I said, in my lifetime of being an athlete, I never competed in my hometown. And I think you have to invest to get back out. And I think the kids will definitely benefit, not just the kids, the adults as well. And I think it's going to do Birmingham amazing. Birmingham's an up-and-coming city, as we know. Buildings are popping up left, right and centre. The Commonwealth game is just the icing on the cake for me.
Can I ask you about, I'll start with you, Mark, on this one, the kind of difference in platform, if you like, that the Commonwealth Games offers as opposed to the Olympic Games. What is it that's special about the Commonwealth Games for you?
For me, it was experience, because before my very first Olympic Games, I went to a Commonwealth Games, and it prepared me for the big venues, the different nations underneath the one roof, and being mentally turned on to compete at the highest level. I think the Commonwealth Games is amazing. And, it's not going to be easy. You're going to have countries like Jamaica, Trinidad, Canada. It's going to be a great event for Birmingham.
Just same point to you, Tony, really, as we see the announcement there today, which was greeted sort of very enthusiastically. Commonwealth Games, the kind of platform that the Games provide, how would you describe it?
It's amazing because like my first Commonwealth Games was in New Zealand. And what I loved, we used to call it the friendly games because it was like some countries what you wouldn't see in Olympic Games or a World Champs there. And it's just nice to see these other countries coming out and competing because they won't have the standard to actually make it like a World Champs or Olympic Games. And the atmosphere is just amazing. You can't put a finger on it. The atmosphere is just amazing. So in Birmingham, the same thing's going to happen.
Well, I was lucky enough to be in Delhi and in Glasgow. They were both fantastic atmospheres. Again, I'm going to ask you the same money question, OK, which is, you know, £750 million at a time when there's a lot of pressure on public services, and people might make that point very reasonably. What would your answer be to that?
Like Mark said, you know, when you're having such a great games coming to your city, you know there's going to be some kind of consequences to it. But you've got to understand what else it's bringing into it. You're going to bring out talent, you're going to bring out jobs. So you've got to look at it in that kind of sense and understand what it's just not about after 2022, it's onwards. And, you know, we're going to see stars coming from Birmingham. And, you know, with that kind of facilities getting built in there, it's a great city, really. I had good dreams in Birmingham because my first European Juniors I won in Birmingham. So it's just a great stadium, great atmosphere, and I'm looking forward to it.
It is a tough question for you, Mark, because I know you're slightly biased there, but why did Birmingham have the edge over the other bidders, do you think?
I think we put in a good campaign. I think we put the work in. We really want it to be in Birmingham, and I think it's about time Birmingham shows the world what we're really about. You know, like Tony said, you know, there's a lot of people that are not from Birmingham that's had great experiences from in competing in Birmingham and all the rest of it. So for me personally, I think it's time to put ourselves on the map as Brummies.
Good note on which to end, Mark. Thank you very much for coming in. Great to talk to you. And Tony, fabulous to have you with us. Thank you very much. And happy Christmas to you both. Thanks a lot.
You too. Take care.
Thank you very much. Great to have both of them with us, and just talk a little bit about the very good news for Birmingham today. So let's move on. It's just turned 5:30. Official photographs to mark the engagement of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle have been released today by Kensington Palace. Let's have a look. 2 images taken by the fashion photographer Alexei Lubo-Mirsky early this week at Frogmore House in Windsor, and the couple who will be spending Christmas with the Queen at Sandringham will be married at St George's Chapel at Windsor Castle, as we know, on the 19th of May next year. So those nice images being published by Kensington Palace today. So at nearly 25 to 6, let's go straight to Sarah for the weather. Hi, Sarah.
Hi there, Hugh. Well, the sun has set now on the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year. It's been a mild, a cloudy sort of day, and that theme stays with us for the next few days. Quite a lot of drizzly rain across western parts of the country, particularly Wales and the southwest of England. Quite a lot of low cloud too over the hills and around the coast. Further east, we've got some clearer spells and a touch of frost across Scotland. Through the day tomorrow, we keep all that cloud around. The rain in the west gradually eases, but a lot of hill fog and drizzle too. Some slightly brighter spells to the east of higher ground, and it will feel mild once again, around 9 to 12 degrees. During Saturday, another dry, cloudy day for many of us. Some more persistent rain starts to move into northern and western Scotland, and that will be ongoing through into Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. Could be problematic here. Dry elsewhere, and again mild too. For the Christmas outlook, then, things are staying largely mild, cloudy and breezy, but we could have some significant rain, perhaps some localised flooding across parts of Scotland.
Time is 5:35 here on BBC News at 5. Let's have a look at the headlines for you. Prime Minister says there must be a proper investigation into former police officers who revealed that pornography was found on Damian Green's parliamentary computers back in 2008. Mr Green was sacked from the government, in effect, after he admitted making misleading statements about the matter.
I share the concerns that have been raised across the political spectrum about comments that were made by a former police officer, and I expect that issue to be properly investigated.
The International Trade Minister, Mark Garnier, is to continue in post after a Cabinet Office investigation into allegations of inappropriate behaviour found that he did not break the ministerial code. The husband of the British-Iranian woman, Nazanin Ratliff, who's in jail in Iran accused of spying, says she's been listed by the authorities there as eligible for early release. The United Nations General Assembly has voted in favour of a non-binding resolution rejecting the American decision to recognise Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Police in Australia are investigating why a man deliberately drove a car into a crowd of pedestrians in Melbourne, injuring 19 people, 4 of them seriously. So at 5:36, let's catch up with all the day's sport and join Ollie today. Hi, Ollie.
Hi, Huw. The Football Association will take no action over the Manchester derby altercation between United and City outside the Old Trafford dressing rooms. City won the match, but in the aftermath, Jose Mourinho was said to take exception to their excessive celebrations. Milk and water was thrown at the Manchester United manager. City coach Mikel Arteta suffered a cut to his head, and Mourinho subsequently questioned City's behaviour and education. The FA asked both clubs for their observations over the incident, but they've decided that no punishment is required. Burnley's James Tarkowski is going to get a break over Christmas. He's accepted a charge of violent conduct by the FA. He's suspended for the next 3 matches. Video evidence was used after officials failed to see him elbow Brighton's Glenn Murray off the ball during their goalless draw last weekend. The defender's going to miss the games against Spurs, Manchester United and Huddersfield. Be available again to face Liverpool on New Year's Day. The Burnley manager had criticised his player after that match, but he thinks that Murray should take some of the blame.
The reason why we're a bit surprised is because you can clearly see Glenn Murray grab his hand. That hand has now got 5 pins in it and a metal plate. So I would suggest an action causes a reaction. We put that to the panel, but they decided, not that shouldn't be reduced. And I think then that opens up what I think has got to be looked at, because that incident can't be deemed the same as some of the incidents we see and be put in the same bracket, and therefore 3-game bans. I think that has to change, because I think it's a retaliation to an action.
Ryan Giggs was one of the favourites to take over at Swansea, but he's ruled himself out just a day after Paul Clement was sacked. The Manchester United legend was assistant at Old Trafford under Louis van Gaal. He had a brief caretaker role there after David Moyes' departure. He was considered for the Swansea role last year, but the job was given to Bob Bradley at the time, who lasted less than 3 months. England's cricketers are licking their wounds, working out how to G themselves up for the last 2 tests against Australia, with the Ashes already gone, of course. One of the rare highlights in the England camp, though, has been the emergence of Dawid Malan, their top run scorer, who's averaged over 50.
It is disappointing that we've got nothing really to play for as a team point of view in terms of the Ashes. We've obviously lost 3-0, but we're 3-0 down already. But I think the pride of the team and the pride of every one of our players will want to make this 3-2, and we want to show that we can play out here and we can perform out here. That's the key thing.
The WBO World Middleweight Champion Billy Joe Saunders has held a news conference after his superb unanimous points victory over Canada's David Lemieux on Saturday. The undefeated British fighter is now targeting super fights with Gennady Golovkin or Saul Alvarez, or both, in 2018.
If it's about the money now, what I do is go and defend against some bums for the next year and pick up a few million. If I really want to do that, it's not about that. It's about me now, while I'm in my prime, to test myself. I look at some fighters and I think, I'd beat you comfortable. I know what I got. When I know myself, my own heart, what I got inside, I want to see if I can bring it out, because if I do bring it out, what I think I've got, it can be very, very special. I think it'd be very, very special. And it'd be the moment of my absolute, it'd be the highlight of my life if I could do that.
That's all the sport for now. I'm going to be back in Sports Day after the 6 o'clock news, about 6:30. You can find a lot more on the Commonwealth Games going to Birmingham in 2022 on the BBC Sport website. We'll be looking at that a lot more closely as well. But between now and then, have a look at bbc.co.uk/sport.
Ollie, many thanks. We'll see you later on. Well, homelessness is not just a complex problem, it can also be a hidden one. A BBC poll has found that 1 in 10 young people across the UK has spent at least a month so-called sofa surfing, that's staying with friends because they've nowhere else to go. 1,000 people aged between 16 and 25 were questioned for the survey. 2/5 said that there had been at least one night when they had nowhere that they could call home. Our correspondent Ian Palmer has more details.
4 years ago, Dale was thrown out of home by his mother on Christmas Day. He was 16 years old.
On the day, I just called a friend and went over there, and that's how I've ended the Christmas Day. And then from there, it was sofa-surfing for 2 months. So between friends and family's houses, just finding somewhere to stay while I was in my A-levels.
Dale's problems began aged 7 when his father left home. He began living with his grandmother, caring for her after a stroke. But during his GCSEs, she needed 24-hour assistance, so he moved back in with his mum. After being kicked out, Dale says he often didn't know where he was going to spend the night while studying at school.
it was very hard trying to balance work life and personal life, because it's hard to focus on doing your schoolwork and revision during the day when you're worrying about where you're going to be sleeping at night.
The poll company Comres spoke to more than 1,000 people aged between 16 and 25. The study found just over 9.3% had spent the night on a friend's floor or sofa for up to a month. The most common reasons included parents being unable or unwilling to provide housing, extended family being unable to help, and splitting from a partner. The homeless charity Key, based in Leyland in Lancashire, helps young people who have nowhere to live. Its operations director says sofa surfing is a hidden and growing problem.
About 70% of the young people we see in our homeless drop-in have sofa surfed, and that's often before they've come to see us at Key, perhaps thinking they can go home, back to their parents' houses, or that maybe it's okay in the long term to stay with different friends or family. But when they run out of options, it's often then they seek help either from the council or directly from ourselves.
Charities say the government needs to improve the way it counts the number of people who are homeless.
There's a really big gap between those people who are actually homeless, they have literally nowhere to live, or they're in temporary, very unsuitable accommodation, and the statistics that the government puts together. And it's really important that if we're to tackle homelessness, the government gets its figures right, because unless it gets its figures right, it won't persuade the Treasury to make the resources available to tackle the problem.
From April next year, the way the government collates information about homelessness will change. It says local authorities will have a legal duty to find out more information on people in a homeless household. Dale Taylor-Gentle says although he never had to sleep rough, he often came close to it. The 20-year-old has found somewhere to live with the help of the charity Centrepoint. He's in his second year at university, studying sociology and criminology. Ian Palmer, BBC News.
It's 5:43. Let's talk about the admission by Apple today that some of its older iPhone models are designed to work more slowly as they get older. Critics say it is just a way to force consumers to buy a new phone. But the company says it is to prolong their life because the performance of the batteries diminishes over time. How do we make sense of those two things? Well, joining me now is our technology correspondent, Rory Catlin-Jones. Before we ask you to decide which it is, Rory, just give us a bit of background to this.
Well, it's been seen almost as an urban myth. Everybody talks about it. Yeah, as my iPhone gets older, it slows down, and they're doing it deliberately to make me buy a new one. And I thought this was largely a conspiracy theory. But yeah, Apple has come out and said it's absolutely true. But what they're doing is they issued a software update last year, in fact, which deliberately slows down the operation of older models. And they say that's because older models have older batteries, and there is a real problem. We know this. Lithium-ion batteries really slow down over the years. And what can happen, particularly in cold weather, is that those phones can suddenly shut down without any warning. And what they say is this slowing down of the whole system puts less strain on it, and therefore you don't get that sudden shut-off. It basically smooths things out. So you're getting a more reliable but less lightning-fast service.
So how long has this been going on? And if it's been going on for a while, the obvious question is, why have they not, admitted it before now?
Well, this is Apple to the core, to coin a phrase. It's amazingly controlling about how its products are seen, what it tells people. It really wants to control the message. It didn't really want this message to come out, it appears, so it kept quiet about it until just a day or so ago, a smart technology analyst took a number of phones, put them through various tests, and effectively proved this is happening. And they had to come out with something. They don't seem to be that keen on transparency as a company. And they've got these very dedicated fans, but sometimes they test their patience right to the limits.
So just very quick last one. If somebody wanted to try to alter this, with some kind of bit of technology or something, is that doable, or do you just have to accept what goes on?
Well, it's probably not wise. The best thing probably is to get a new battery, but we all know that's not easy and reasonably expensive because iPhone batteries are built in. They change the way batteries work.
OK, Rory, thanks very much again. Rory Catlin-Jones there, our technology correspondent. Now, it's just at 5:45. An MP's aide has been found not guilty of raping a woman at the Houses of Parliament. That was the decision by a jury at Southwark Crown Court. 24-year-old Samuel Armstrong, who worked for the Conservative MP Craig McKinley, had denied 2 counts of rape and 2 of indecent assault.
My whole life has been turned upside down. For a year I have not slept or eaten, and I was innocent. Were it not for the fact that crucial evidence was disclosed to my defence team just 8 working days before trial, there could well have been yet another miscarriage of justice in this case. Thank you very much.
The statement there outside Southwark Crown Court today. More than 60,000 mothers or babies have been harmed by potential lapses in maternity care in England in the past 2 years. BBC has learned that more than 250,000 incidents were logged by hospital staff between April 2015 and March of 2017, the equivalent of 1 mistake for every 5 births. Our health correspondent Adina Campbell has the story for us.
3 years ago, Wendy and Ryan Agus lost their baby daughter, who was stillborn. An NHS investigation found some maternity guidelines were not followed, something which has deeply affected the couple ever since.
Leaving the hospital with a box of things instead of your baby was just...
Having to leave her there, going home, having to leave your baby there, you know, just can't comprehend it.
It was at this hospital with a midwifery-led unit where Wendy Agus was cared for. Despite reporting to staff that she had concerns about her baby's movements, she was sent home on 2 different occasions. But she should have been reviewed by a consultant at another local hospital with a consultant-led midwifery unit. Over the last 2 years, there were nearly 1.3 million births in England. NHS staff are encouraged to use a voluntary reporting scheme if they have concerns about care. And since 2015, more than 275,000 incidents at maternity units have been reported. The problems included women being told to stay at home, babies being left brain damaged, and potentially avoidable deaths. Just over 3/4 of the cases reported did not cause any harm to mother or baby, but more than 60,000 did, something the government says it's hoping to reduce under new plans announced last month.
There is just too much heartache, too many appalling tragedies when these kinds of things happen. We want to be the safest and best maternity system in the world. The vast majority of births are completely safe. But what's going wrong at the moment is that when we have a tragedy, we're not learning from it nearly as effectively as we should.
But the Royal College of Midwives says staffing levels must improve.
The Royal College of Midwives is concerned about the levels of midwifery staffing, and they are low. And we would like to think of solutions and ways of making sure that we have more midwives in the future.
East Sussex Healthcare Trust says they've apologised to Wendy and Ryan and admitted some aspects of their service did not meet their usual standards. But that's no comfort to the couple.
We can't move forward. We've tried to, but we can't. It's always there, every day. Memories, it never goes away. To me, it's the first thing I think about when I wake up, and it's the last thing I think about at night.
Adina Campbell, BBC News.
Special report there by Adina Campbell, and there are more details on the BBC News website for you as well, with some links to some of the background to that story. It is 10 to 6. It's Christmas time. You deserve a treat, we think. So stand by for a rather special guest. And he's been tempted out of his studio at Radio 1, very cosy studio, away from his, I don't know, millions of adoring fans. He's the godfather of grime. And this is the story, I have to say this, you know, in a modest way, of the most unlikely bromance of 2017. And it started, before I even tell you who it is, it started with a memorable car share.
Bust it up, bust it big. Bust it big, bust it big.
Is this your stuff?
Yeah. It's your favourite one, isn't it?
It is. Got my track on.
I played it just for you, Huw. I know how much you like it right now. Whew.
Hey, I was quite all right. Yeah? Don't be so late next time.
I'm sorry, man. It's traffic.
Come on, I got work to do.
It's that traffic.
Okay.
Here we go. We are live on BBC Radio 1 and 1 Extra. This is the 8th, and I can't believe what is happening in the studio right now. 2 broadcasting institutions. Annie and Huw about to do the news.
Tonight at 10.
Let's have some more news about Brexit.
Oh my God, that was How did I go? That was the best. That was brilliant.
I've got to say, that was a bit scary, actually.
Was it?
Because it worked so well.
It did, didn't
Honestly,
I actually leave the show at 10 o'clock just to watch the news with you.
I know he does.
I go into the green room and I'm
You're
like,
not
put the
altogether
news
convinced.
on, put the news on now. I don't care what you're watching. I want news on.
What time are you finishing tonight?
11ish?
Yeah, meet down the pub?
Yeah, 11.
See you then.
Quarter past 11.
I love my money being all in singles.
Of course, it is the grime master himself, Charlie Sloth, rapper, DJ, producer, actor, megastar, TV presenter, a real-life legend. He's only 30. It's absolutely sickening. We'll be talking to Charlie in just a moment. After this...
My head's spinning. Is this normal? Stay on the topic of women. Again, sorry, Miss Kingston. Last one. Who is the most famous lady you have ever adult wrestled with?
Serena Williams.
What? You and Serena did a thing.
All I want for Christmas, all I want for Christmas is a one-night stand with Dusty's mum. Dusty's mum. All I want for Christmas, all I want for Christmas is a one-night stand with Dusty's mum.
What the hell is going on?
I can explain. No, I'll do that, Kaz. Hello, you've grown up,
What
haven't
are you
mate?
doing here?
I'm here for you. What more do you want for Christmas? Other than your dad back. Oh my God! Inside the place!
Well, my dear Charles, it is my turn to welcome you after you welcomed me into your cosy studio on Radio 1 on Tuesday night. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a great to have you in the studio. OK, serious question.
How am I doing? You've not commented on...
No, I'm ignoring that,
Oh,
OK?
right.
Because it's such...
Shall I stop?
It's a pastiche,
Right, OK.
Here's a serious question.
Yep.
For viewers of mine who are, now thinking, OK, I've talked about grime and all the rest of it. If I would say to you, here's your challenge in a sentence, what is grime? What would you say?
Grime is the voice of the youth. Music that the youngsters feel really represents them.
OK, and why does it represent them?
Because it's honest, no holds barred, and it's very open. Anyone can be involved in grime, no matter of your race, your class, it doesn't matter.
So is that to do with the type of music, or is it to do with the content and the words and the message? What is it?
I think it's a bit of everything. I think it's the lifestyle, the content, the message, the way people treat each other. Everybody's welcome in the world of grime. And I feel the youngsters really feel that no matter where they're from in the world, no matter what they do or what walk of life they come from, they feel like they're a part of it.
So it's inclusive.
Very inclusive.
It's welcoming.
Very welcoming.
So the question for you, I suppose, now is, how did you get involved? And how did you become, a kind of figurehead for this kind of music? How did that happen?
I started DJing in the youth club when I was 13. Started doing pirate radio by the time I was 14, lying to my parents, sneaking out, saving my pocket money to pay the subs. I just couldn't escape my passion for the music and for the culture as well, and the lifestyle, and the people that was involved in it, my peers. And, it just went from one extreme to another. Like, I knew when I was 13, there was no other job for me. As long as I was involved in music to some capacity, I'd be happy. And look at me now.
Look at you now.
I'm the biggest baby.
You didn't need to say that, but
Yeah.
you have said it,
Yeah,
OK?
I did, yeah.
We've been seeing clips of you there. This, your show's taken on a new dimension,
It
OK?
has.
And it's grown and grown and grown, and your profile has grown and grown and grown. What are you trying to achieve? Beyond your own personal success, what is this about?
For me, my main passion has always been supporting and providing a platform for artists to showcase what they're about. Like, so many of these artists, the Stormzys, the Gigs, the Bugsy Malones, these guys that are people that I've got great relationships with away from music. And I never felt before I was here there was any platform that showcased the amount of talent these guys have. So as soon as I got the opportunity to join the BBC and create that platform, it was kind of like, whoa, we're here. Look at us now. And I mean, like, a lot of these artists are millionaires now. So looking at the growth of the scene, the industry, the culture, again, the lifestyle, and you know yourself how welcoming it is because you're a part of it now. Everyone's like,
part of it.
hello, Huw.
I'm a bit of grime.
He's a bit of grime.
People don't realise this.
They don't know
I don't
it.
like to say this to you,
Yeah.
Charlie, because I feel, you're going to just be a bit dismissive, but I kind of feel that I brought grime into the UK.
No, you did.
When I
You
said
did.
on the news at 10, let's talk about grime, it kind of happened.
It did.
You were riding on my wave, yeah?
I mean,
I've got to say that to you.
Yeah, it kind of did have a massive impact on the scene.
I don't like to
I
sort
mean,
of,
when the big boss man of news is talking about grime, I mean, everyone knows that you're the big boss man of news. So when you're talking about it, I mean, like, everybody's like, okay, for those that are not in the know, they want to be in the know. Because you knows about it, they want to know about it.
Let's talk about grime, I said.
Let's talk
and what
about
happened?
grime.
People started talking about grime.
There you go.
Dizzy Rascal, who were featured in the opening ceremony of the Olympics in 2012, which I was commenting on. I'm not drawing mad conclusions here, but I was commenting. He was part of the ceremony. It was a massive success. Now, there's two things going on there. I don't want to spell it out, but Dizzy, frankly, I think owes me a bit of thanks as well. You may think that you're looking a bit cynical, a bit sceptical.
No, do you know what? I'm a believer. I mean, like, ever since you gave me that cosign, since we started hanging out and going to the pub and stuff, and you, like, started borrowing me your jackets. Thanks for borrowing me the jacket, by the way.
It looks good on you.
Thanks, man. I mean, my life's changed.
Well, I'm hoping that in the new year, 2018, you go from strength to strength.
Thank you.
And I hope that I can make a return visit.
You're always
to
welcome.
your cosy studio.
You are always welcome.
What I have to say, and I'm going to say this to my own production staff, he has a lot more power than I have, OK? He does his own bit and he gets on with it. And I have to obey orders, don't I? That's what news is all about.
I think
but Charlie's
partly,
my role model from now on.
That's partly because I haven't really got a team. I'm just putting it out there. I kind of work on my own.
They're not going to like that.
They're not.
They're really not going to like that.
I kind of work on my own. I do everything myself, and I'm a one-man team. I'm joking about
You've got to say this. Now, this is very, very important for all my Welsh friends. Nadolig. Llawen.
Llawen.
Thank you very much.
Nadolig, Llawen. Merry Christmas.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Charlie Sloth, it's great to have you with us. Sarah, hello.
How do I follow that, Huw? Well, the sun has set now on the shortest day of the year, the winter solstice, and it's certainly been a mild, cloudy sort of one. We've got more rain working in through this evening and tonight across Northern Ireland, parts of Northern England, Wales and the southwest too. Elsewhere, drier, but still a lot of low cloud and hill fog and some frost across parts of Scotland with the clearer spells. Now, through the day on Friday, another grey, cloudy day. Hill fog across hills and around coasts towards the west. Towards the east of high ground, that's where you're more likely to see some brighter spells, and temperatures still on the mild side, around about 6 to 12 degrees. Saturday, some rain across the northwest of Scotland. That'll be more of a player as we head through Christmas Eve and Christmas Day lingering, and we could see some localised flooding. But elsewhere across the country, a dry day to come. Mild once again, most of us up there in double figures. It stays mild towards Christmas, quite cloudy and breezy, but there will be some rain at times in the north.
Tonight at 6, the sacking of the Deputy Prime Minister. Anger among some Conservative MPs about the role of former police officers in the affair. Damian Green admits making misleading statements about pornography allegations. But now Theresa May joins MPs' concerns and calls for an investigation.
I share the concerns that have been raised across the political spectrum about comments that were made by a former police officer, and I expect that issue to be properly investigated.
We'll be asking